Okay, so while you're enjoying your lunch, we wanted to get started with a really interesting conversation with IBM, who has graciously offered the lunch today, and with Lydia Logan. So Lydia Logan is Vice President for Global Education and Workforce Development, CSR at IBM. And today we're going to be talking about how to build an AI-ready future and skills for the broader future. So Lydia, if you could please join us on the stage. Welcome to Lydia, please. Nice to meet you. You can make it work. We're comfortable here. We're just having lunch. So Lydia, I wanted to frame this. I'm actually going to read the remarks that I wrote because I want to make sure we cover everything, just kind of frame this really important conversation. So we're in the middle of a massive realignment of skills, of institutions and entire economies that are being driven by the rise of AI. And it's not just about coding or prompt engineering, it's about who gets access, who gets left behind, and how we prepare the society for a future where many of those jobs that people won't hold in the future because they won't even exist yet. So this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the important work that IBM is doing in this regard. So let's just get started with the conversation. I wanted to start kind of with the big picture. So AI is everywhere, obviously. Here we are talking about AI being everywhere. Yeah, so I mean, both of us have probably worked in this for longer than the AI hype, so it's kind of old hat for us. But many people feel like it's something that's actually being done to them, like it's almost something that you can't control. It's not being done with them, and that is kind of what I wanted to start with. So from your perspective, how far are we from building a society that's actually really genuinely AI ready? And are we moving fast enough in terms of innovation? Are we just kind of scrambling to keep up in terms of how we're training people?
We're not moving fast enough. We need to be ready. I think it's why we're all here at this conference, right? What are the ways we need to be ready? What kinds of policies need to be in place? Thinking about practical, responsible, ethical uses. We need everyone to have foundational skills in understanding what AI is and what it isn't, and what it does and what it doesn't do. And so I think we're not ready, right? Our systems were not designed for rapid pace, massive scale shifts that happen very quickly. If you think about our higher education institutions, they're not ready to make these kinds of changes this quickly. So there's a lot of work that we all have to do together.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of dig into that, the reality of that skills gap that you're talking about. So, IBM did a recent CEO study, and the data really revealed some kind of striking numbers. It said that 54% of companies are hiring for roles that didn't even exist a year ago, which is crazy. And a third of the workforce actually needs to be reskilled within the next 3 years, right?
Correct.
So
yes.
How are we remedying that? Like it just sounds like we're like you said, very far behind, and there's an urgency here.
So there's certainly an urgency. I think, those of us who are here are already involved. But what we need to do is make sure other people get involved who are not thinking about it, not participating, don't understand. IBM has multiple programs. The main one that we have for free that's offered globally around the world is called Skills Build. It's skillsbuild.org. We collaborate with university systems, government agencies, nonprofits, other, our clients and others to make sure we can offer the skills people need for free, but we can't do it alone, right? That's why we have all these partners. It's why we're, moving with urgency. We're rolling out new courses and new credentials all the time. Again, all free, but trying to reach the scale we all need to meet with a rapid pace of change is really a big lift.
Right.
And I think to your earlier point, making sure that we're not leaving anyone behind. We already have gaps in skills. We already have access gaps. Let's make sure we don't compound those.
Yeah, that's great. And I wanted to dig into another stat that really stood out to me. It said that 65% of CEOs say that they'll use automation to close skill gaps. So that may be pragmatic, but what does it signal about how companies are actually viewing talent? So is automation a bridge or is it a bypass? How do you see that?
I think for some it's a bridge, for some it's a bypass. At IBM, it's certainly a bridge. We have a human-centered design approach that's also, ethical, responsible uses, but automate what can be automated so that people can do what they are uniquely positioned to do.
Right.
We have a client zero approach, and we did that with our HR function. So the kinds of things that can just be automated around benefits, around onboarding people and moving them from one location to another, those kinds of things don't really require a human. They're a standard process. We automated those. For things that are complex and really require you to have conversations and understand non-standard, uses that are outside of policies, you get a human. So we have something called a complex case ticket. You file a complex case ticket, and you get somebody who's basically a caseworker to work with you to solve it. So it is not a bypass. It's bypassing, it's getting all of the automatable sort of, administrative, rote things out of the way so people can do what they do best.
Right. What needs a human touch gets a human touch, and what can be automated gets automated. So I think that's a really interesting approach, and it's actually kind of sets people's minds at ease, knowing that you will still get that human touch. And you've been at the center of creating large-scale frameworks for AI competence at IBM, and I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges in getting educators and employers to see AI not just kind of as a technical tool, but actually as a foundational capability?
I think it's both, right? The use case that I just mentioned is something that we use when we're talking to companies and nonprofits, honestly, and other kinds of institutions about thinking about an AI transformation.
Yeah.
Right? For universities, it can be on the teaching and learning side, but it also can be on the administrative and operations side. They may not be thinking about that. I think the other complication is that people are thinking about the technology first and then the use, rather than the use and then the technology.
Right.
So lead with people, lead with the reason you're doing it, build to make things easier, better, faster, less expensive for the people and the people you serve, and then use the technology to support that transformation. Right? So I think where we are having, we have workshops we call AI for Impact that we offer in New York City and around the world for nonprofits to start thinking about how can they use AI. They may use it to assist with grant writing so they can file more grant applications. They might use it for managing reports that they have on their impact, right? Feeding in a lot of data, getting some narrative. This is not about being afraid. This is helping them to understand where can you automate things so that you do what you do best, serve people, right? Serve your mission. How can we help you think about doing those things better?
Yeah.
So some of it is exposure, some of it's a level of comfort, some of it is really counteracting some of the negative narratives that are out there.
Okay.
And making sure that people are willing to take the first step. So it's back to that foundational knowledge everyone has. If they don't have it, they tend to lean back. We'll always see that curve, the early adopters, the fast followers, the people who are like, I'll wait until it's kind of the norm, and then what I call the active resistors, right? We still have a few fast followers. We're in that first phase. For those of us who are here, we tend to be in that early adopter group, pushing the envelope, thinking about what needs to happen. How do we collaborate? What are the use cases? What does responsible use look like? What does transparency look like? What is open? So we're on the innovation and the front edge. We need to bring everyone else along with us.
Right. And along those lines, what's really important is expanding access to AI education, right? So we talk about this readiness. We can't really ignore the fact that this has really broad effects on society. So like a lot of AI education still happens in urban centers, in English, through maybe elite institutions, right, have access to these types of things. So what does it actually take to break that pattern and create, true access? And I know that IBM is really trying to make AI learning more inclusive. What are you doing through your platforms like SkillsBuild?
So we're doing a handful of things. We have universities we work with around the world. We give them access to our technology, to IBM mentors, so groups of students can build. I think it's important to understand it's what you know and are able to do. So we've been focused generally around the world for the last, I don't know, let's say 100 plus or minus years on degrees.
Yeah.
But most institutions are not able to pivot fast enough. So we talk a lot about how can you integrate credentials, digital credentials, in a degree pathway. That way students who step out and don't finish their degree are not leaving empty-handed.
Yeah.
It also means that you have something that is industry aligned and shows what you know and are able to do along the way. You're building a portfolio. So this is going beyond just your degree as the terminal document, but becoming a lifelong learner, continuing to build on your portfolio and making sure you have something to show for it. So again, like this transformation of institutions where, you know, if you wait until you have a 4-year degree to say that you know something, by the time you're finished, some of that's obsolete. So we've got to find a way to do this iteration, upskilling, and rapid reach faster. We do that through our partnerships. We do that through, you know, making sure that they're accessible in multiple languages, that there are courses everywhere from a 1-day workshop all the way to 4 10-week, semester-long, year-long offerings that we have. We use our IBM subject matter experts as lecturers, as content advisors. We work and collaborate through organizations like the AI Alliance. And then we also have a collaboration with UNESCO ISL to look at how can we build on frameworks for educators in higher education to think about responsible use, building on the, you know, the standards that were already set, but starting to put these in people's hands in a way that they're actionable.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're using all of the connections and resources that we have to make sure we're expanding reach and impact.
Great. Yeah, and expanding on what you just said, Lydia, you know, moving beyond frameworks and into kind of individuals, right? So we talk about AI skills, but most people are not going to become, you know, ML engineers or coders, right? So what are some of the kind of less obvious and critical skills that you see workers in general needing? And I also wanted to, if you think back to the conversation we had last week, Lydia, I'd love to talk about what we discussed around what entry level means these days, if we could get into that as well. Yep. So go ahead.
So a few things on this. I think, you know, again, as the early adopter, leader, builder company IBM is on AI and ethics and use, we think a lot about the future of work. And the future of work is really hybrid teams of humans and digital workers or agents. Yeah. So when you think about what skills people need, they not only need that foundational knowledge of what AI is and how to use it and what it isn't, they also need to start thinking about responsible use, but also what will the world look like when we have hybrid teams of humans and digital workers. It's already happening today, it's just not ubiquitous. Yeah. So thinking about understanding, you know, design principles for work, understanding project management, understanding human management. What will it mean to be a manager of hybrid teams? What kinds of work do you give and assign to humans? Where do you need humans making a decision and humans in the loop? And what do you automate? Because we tend to talk about these as two separate things, when ultimately these are all going to come together, and it's starting to happen now. It's just, again, like I said, not ubiquitous. We think about what is the new entry-level job, and I tell this story. I can't remember if I told it to you.
You did, yeah.
Right, 1 million years ago, I was an intern on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I worked for a member of Congress. A hearing was coming up. It was my job to get a briefing memo together for the member before the vote happened. I walked down the street to the Library of Congress. I filled out a form and requested what was then called an info pack. A team of researchers at the Library of Congress pulled together about 200 pages of background information. I went back at the end of the week, picked up the packet, went home, pored over it, wrote a draft memo, gave it to the chief of staff. He marked it up, gave it back to me. I made edits, and then gave it to the member in time for the vote, right? This now, with generative AI, takes minutes. So what does it mean for a young person starting a job to be coached, to understand what good research looks like, to understand how do you create an executive memo? How do you brief people? So there's a lot there. I think of it as starting in the middle, right? What had been entry-level skills are now skills that are around, the sort of 3-year mark of a job. Being able to write the great memo, do the right research, have the right citations, use your critical thinking, and understand what it is that makes a good end product. So we have to start thinking in terms of that for students without requiring them not to use AI to do the research, but rather to look for citations, to spot check the citations, make sure that they're real.
Yeah.
Right, so these are the kinds of skills we need people to have. Design thinking, critical thinking, project management. Again, that foundation of understanding AI, what it is, what it isn't, and ethical use.
Right. And that's going to apply across all sectors, right?
Across all sectors. So we think a little bit about people today as like users and the builders are those computer science, data science students or professionals, and everyone else might dabble in a little generative AI, but we're at the point now where anyone can do vibe coding, they can create their own assistant. It's available now, it's just not used widely. But give it 1 to 3 years and people will start realizing what they can do to change how they manage their lives, how they manage their workflows, how they manage the things that they do every day to become more productive. Those are going to be the skills people need, is understanding, again, as an individual contributor, when do I create an agent or an assistant that comes along with me to help me be more productive? And when do I need to, what is it that I need to do for myself? And what do I use AI to assist me in being the best and productive person I can be?
Right. Since education is so important, and you're talking about the kind of this urgency, if we start thinking about our youth, right? If you're thinking about designing kind of a program for someone who's an adolescent, 14-year-old, and is not necessarily interested in STEM, where would you go with that? What do you think they should be looking at, studying, learning?
Well, they need to know a little bit about coding. They don't have to be able to, they don't need to become proficient in Python, but they should understand what it is, what's on the back end, right? There has to be some basic knowledge there. More than basic knowledge is great, but you do need to understand what goes into models, where they're limited, when they're specialized, what the data models are being used for. And then we need to make sure that they can understand the application in their context, what matters to them. So I was listening to the last panel and thinking, this is a great opportunity for students to understand how AI is used in the music industry, how it's used for fan bases. IBM has content. We sponsor the Masters tournament. We do all of the data for the tournament. We do the same thing for Wimbledon. We do the same thing for the US Open. And we now have education modules for students helping them to understand how AI is used in determining, scores and predictive analytics for the tournament. We're doing it now with Formula One. So we have partnerships across different sectors. We're doing some of it in marketing. I had a conversation with the head of the marketing foundation for the industry, and they said, we have a problem. What students are learning in universities is not what we're using in the workplace. They don't know how to use AI for data analytics. They don't know how to use it for audience segmentation, for campaign creation, and even down to images that might be storyboarded for a presentation to a client. So how can we start to make it relevant for all students across sectors? Users will become builders. We will all be builders at some point, so we have to get past this idea that we don't really need to know much about it. The people over there in the high-tech, science fields are going to do it all. That's over. So the more that we get used to the idea that we have AI in all aspects of our life and that we need to use it every day. I have friends who use it to manage their kids' schedules. Friends who have 4 kids and have to get them all different places at different times. For those of you who are moms, I'm sure you get it, right? So if you have an assistant that helps you manage all the things in your daily life in a way that's applicable to you, this is how we get people to come along.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually gets me to kind of my final question is that, we've been talking about readiness and what it takes to get ready, but like what does a ready society actually look like? So if we think like 4 years into the future, we're back here on the stage talking about this, what's changed?
I think what's changed is policies are in place to understand governance.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone has an understanding. Look, there are always going to be good actors and bad actors. We just hope we've got more people on the good side than the bad.
Yeah.
That young people who are coming up into the workforce, as well as those who are in, understand what ethical and responsible use looks like and how to use technology to the best benefit and can keep people in the right places where we need to have people. I think it's really important to understand that technology is an assist for humans, not a replacement for humans.
Right.
And in 4 to 5 years, that's what I think it will look like, right? It'll go from a few of us in the, early adopter category to the majority of people, we hope, in responsible, ethical use for productivity. We did a report last year with Ambersetti, and they were saying in countries where there is declining population and the GDP is at risk for going down because you don't have as many people in the workforce, if we do our job and make sure people have AI skills, we can actually increase productivity with the same number of people and keep GDP in those countries constant.
Wow.
That's huge. That's a huge piece of what could happen, right?
Yeah.
So they're really concrete examples of what we can do and the positive outcomes beyond healthcare and education and personalized learning for everyone.
Yeah.
There's some great things coming, and I think we need to work together to make them true. IBM is certainly doing our part to do it.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to do. It's encouraging to see that every year at this conference, for instance, we're more and more people. It's not just the early adopters, it's people from every sector. And yeah, IBM, you guys are doing such an amazing job in this and a really critical part of this movement. So thank you so much. Thank you for the lunch as well. We're very grateful for it. And thank you, Lydia. Lydia is actually going to be around a little bit if you have any questions for her, any questions about Skills Build, any of the other programs that IBM is doing right now. So thank you so much, Lydia, and thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thanks.